Welcome to On the Edge, brought to you by Elite Sales Edge with your host, Stephen Brown. In the series, Getting to Know Your CXOs, we'll be diving deep into conversations with various C-level executives. We'll explore the formidable challenges they encounter, the critical decisions they make, and the lessons that have left a lasting impact on them. Sit back and prepare to gain some insightful knowledge from the leaders who shape the business world.
Welcome to On the Edge. I'm your host, Stephen Brown. I'm excited to bring you another episode in the series, Getting to Know Your CXOs. Today, my guest is Joe Ward. Joe is an accomplished, self-directed executive with an uninterrupted record of success in developing and leading high-performance organizations, proficient in corporate strategy with a focus on creating winning cultures and driving both top and bottom line results. With a reputation as a forward thinker, Joe has been on the front edge of numerous technologies such as voice over IP, SaaS or software as a service, and platform as a service, and he is now positioning Iken as the first company to bring holographic technology and applications to the personal use market. As an executive, Joe has assisted in the growth and ultimate sale of multiple public companies, resulting in a significant increase in shareholder value. Joe currently resides in Austin, Texas with his wife Sandy and has 3 sons. He's also a big University of Georgia Bulldog fan. Go Dogs. Joe, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Steve. Good to see you again.
Oh, you too. Why don't you take a couple of seconds and introduce yourself to the crowd?
Well, I don't even recognize who you were just talking about, so that's pretty well written. I guess I've done some things in my day, but no, it's a pleasure to be on. A little bit to tie on to what you just read. I'm an old guy, right? So I've been around a while, mainly in the telephony business. Came up through the ranks in the sales, marketing end of the companies that I was with, and so was really fortunate to be put in a position early in my career where I was able to help grow businesses, learn along the way, and I think it's prepared me pretty well to be a CEO today.
That's awesome. Well, that's the aim of this show and this series is about helping people. And you and I have been in this business a long time. I was fortunate enough to be able to work alongside of you a number of years ago. Learned a ton, and good friend, good colleague, and the ability to share your information and insight with folks that are moving into C-level roles and others, I think is a great way to give back to the community and help out. So with that, Joe, let's jump right into it. Let's say a person's starting their first position as a CEO. Tell me, what do you think are the most important things that CEO needs to do in that first 30, 60 days to really get off on the right foot?
Yeah, it's a multi-million-dollar question, right? And I think there's 2 different answers to that question, right? If you're coming in as a CEO of an established organization, that's one track. If you're a CEO of a startup, which I've done recently, I think that's a completely different scenario in terms of what action you take immediately, because they're very different. But I think overarching, it's to be patient, at least in terms of learning as much as you can early on. I'd say in the first 30 days about your environment, your coworkers, the business, what its challenges are, and then really kind of take a measured approach to how to implement policies and procedures that are going to help. But again, it really depends on the environment that you're coming into. From my own experience, I've done both growing businesses and cleaning up businesses, and both are very different.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And I've interviewed a number of people, and the great ones like yourselves, I hear the similar theme. It's patience, and you got to go in there and understand first, right? If you go in kicking doors in and stuff like that, it generally does not work out well. Getting to know the people, getting to know the company, getting to know the customers, and working through that seems to be a consistent theme across the folks I've talked to.
Well, I speak from experience. I've learned the hard way. I've made some mistakes along the way, right? And you know, it's a very, very fine line that you have to walk when you become a leader, whether it's a CEO or CTO or CXO, as you say in your podcast.
Mm,
It's very easy to make mistakes, and that's okay. You got to be pretty thick-skinned, right?
mm,
Um, but I have learned over my career that waiting a little bit is probably the best way to go about it. Uh, it's normal to feel a sense of urgency. You know, I'm now in a position, whether I've been promoted internally or coming into an organization from the outside, you're the new person, right? So there's a lot of
mm.
expectations on you, and it's very easy to kind of make those initial mistakes by acting too quickly. So it's been my experience that slowing that down a little bit and thinking about, you know, the next 5 or 6 moves as opposed to what's right in front of you is probably going to serve you well.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Um, Having the right leadership team and people in place are critical to any company's success. Can you share with us, what you think it takes to be a good leader, and how you go about building out a team around you?
Yeah, again, I can't stress enough how important it is that you rely on your team. You know, you spend the appropriate amount of time hiring people, training them, but then they've got to really produce on their own, and you can mentor them. Um, and I found that to be probably one of the most rewarding parts of my career has been the ability to help people be the best version of themselves. And I think you do that not by micromanaging, but by giving guidelines that you've learned
Mhm.
over time that will lead to success, and then helping people stay on that task. Um, at the end of the day, as a CEO, going from a middle manager to a CEO, what's the most striking challenge is that you no longer have that person behind you or above you to say, "Hey, what are we doing?" It's like I've done that before, where you turn around and you go, "Oh, it's just me," right?
Right.
So so those type of decisions are new to anybody who comes into this
Mhm.
role, and that includes how you manage people, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. And
Mhm.
I think what I've learned most recently in the startup mode is that it really is a all hands on deck environment, and
Mhm.
that you have to give people the rope they need to be successful, the opportunity to make decisions, to support them in those decisions. They're going to make mistakes, right? We
Mhm.
all do.
Yeah,
But through those mistakes, you learn, and you become closer. And so, in my most recent journey, which is now going on year 6, I can't tell you how great it's been to really be part of the core group of people here at Iken.
that's awesome. That is awesome. So, we've, as leaders, particularly in this space right now, actually in any space, uh, we were put into a situation where there was no playbook. We had to manage or lead through a global pandemic, and making decisions is challenging enough, as you just said, right? And then there's difficult decisions, and then you add a global pandemic on that. But what advice or what thoughts would you share with your incoming or existing CEOs on a process for making tough decisions? How do you go about that?
That's a tough one.
Hmm.
I think at the core level, you have to be confident in your abilities. You have to realize that people look to you for leadership. You have to be open to the fact that you might get it wrong, right? Um, but all of that is just part of the job. I think
Hmm.
what the company is looking for out of a CEO is confidence, is decision making and ownership, accountability. You know, at the end of the day, if things aren't going the way they're supposed to be going, it's on me. It's
Yeah.
on the CEO.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to accept that and make tough decisions that are expected from your shareholders and your investors and the people that ultimately you serve. And you know, you talk about the pandemic. Try starting a technology company and being, you know, knee deep into R&D and manufacturing and hit supply chain problems and workplace problems and capital problems. I mean, a lot of companies failed during the
Yeah.
pandemic, and I'm really proud of the fact that our team and our group really hung in there together through all of it. And we were in multiple states. We were doing a hardware manufacturing model with supply chain issues, had to make decisions on risk buys and timing and all kinds of things, but we were committed to the end game, and we were able to deliver on it. But it really does come down to people. And
Yeah.
you know this from
Yeah.
from our time working together. At the end of the day, it all comes down to people.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember being in meetings with you, some pretty serious ones when we had brought a couple companies together. We're, going and, having to make product decisions, people decisions and all that. And the theme that, I learned from you was like, hey, we're going to figure this out as a team in this room. And then once the decision is made after all the input, it's not my decision or yours, it's our decision. We've made it. This is what we've decided to do. And we're going to go out there and get it done. And that was a great lesson, because you want healthy debate, you want differing opinions, but at the end of the day, once the decision's made, you got to support it, wholeheartedly, and go get after it and make sure your people get it and you help them get there as well. But man, you're not kidding on some of the supply chain issues. There were like products like, wait, what do you mean 26-week lead time? What?
Yeah, and you know, in my current role, we're talking about new technology, never been done before. So we're going through R&D on form factor and all of that goes with it. And so we're not even sure if what we think we need today, we're going to need 26 weeks from now, right?
Right.
And so it's been tough. I'm actually sitting on some inventory as we speak that, you know, we're probably not going to use anytime real soon. But you know, those are the things that happen. But to your point, you know, on the one hand, I'm talking about be patient when you start, give yourself some time, and I stand by that. But then to your point, once you need to make a decision,
Yeah.
you made the decision. You got to execute really quickly, and you can't second guess yourself, because guess what? Everybody else is doing that for you.
Right. You got plenty of those people.
You know, yeah, one of my early mentors, and he hates that word. I won't mention his name because he doesn't want to be a mentor. But one of my early bosses, superiors, when I was struggling with a particular decision, and we had about, I don't know, 500 people reporting up through my organization, and he said, Joe, you know, they all think they should have your job anyway. So they all think they can do it better. So just be you, just do your job.
Yep.
And that's important for anybody in leadership to know that.
It's a great perspective, actually. Good stuff. So, technology business, I don't think we can have a conversation without this thing. So AI is coming into businesses quite rapidly. What's your thoughts as a leader? What are you thinking about? And how do you envision this impacting business?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, not only in our society as a whole, but certainly in my business, our current business. You know, I was looking at some articles where the value of a word has dropped by over 95% in the last 18 months. And what does that mean? Well, it means that it's becoming a commodity, right? Now, in my world, take that, and the real issue for I think everybody is the visual component of AI, your identity. how do you know that this is me right now?
Right.
How do I know this is you? We don't. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we do now. The people that need to know that it's not Biden pushing the red button and sending nukes, or Putin, or the people that really need to know, and you've got a military background,
Yeah.
the people that really need to know. But
Mm-hmm.
we're getting dangerously close to the point where you will not be able to tell.
Yeah.
So we have a, our business is very much embracing AI on the visual side, and we've evolved to a point where we believe we have a cure for the problem. And so, but to answer your specific question, I think the biggest challenge, there's so many, right? They're certainly
Mm-hmm.
putting people out of work, figuring out how it's going to affect the economy and the ecosystem. But I'm really focused on security,
Yeah.
and what does it mean in terms of your personal identity, and how we can protect that. In the future, I envision having a little green check at the bottom right corner of this call saying, "That's really Stephen Brown."
Yeah.
And if it doesn't have the check, I'm not talking to you, right?
Right.
So we're really going to all have to be conscious of the fact that our world is changing, and you cannot put the genie back in the bottle.
Nope.
But you have to sit down as a company and really, whatever your niche vertical market is, you really do have to be very proactive and sit down as a company and address it openly, honestly, and figure out how you fit into that ecosystem, because it's not going away.
Mm-mm.
It's just going to accelerate, and it's a big concern to everybody.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, it is the proverbial Pandora's box, right? Because, it's not going to slow down. I mean, we all are familiar with the technology adoption life cycle. Once this stuff starts, it's going. A lot of it's going to be good. I think it's going to save a lot of lives. I think it's going to make, a lot of things we do a lot easier, but we can't just go forward too fast without really looking at the other side of it, because there's already instances of things going sideways, and we've got to get that under control quick.
Well, hopefully, you know, uh, uh, calmer minds will prevail, as they say. I think, I'm a big believer in the pendulum. The pendulum always swings a little bit way too far to the right.
Mhm.
I don't mean politically, or way
Sure.
too far to the left. Maybe I do, but we've got to find the center, right? And that
Yep.
sometimes is a painful journey.
Mhm.
But I do think that you're right. I think that AI, at least in the short term to medium term, is very dangerous. It's going to be extremely disruptive. It's going to do some good things and a lot of bad things, but it's here to
Mhm.
stay. So we got to figure out how to use it in a very productive way. And I do believe that ultimately that will happen, and
Mhm.
it'll be an amazing tool that will help humanity as a whole. And I really believe that. We
Mhm.
just gotta make sure that we understand the pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. So you've served in a number of companies, so it's just kind of a two-part question. You know, what are one or two good memorable experiences you could share with the audience, that you really drew from or learned from? And then I'd love to hear, I'm sure the audience would too, a little bit about, Iken and what drove you there. What's the passion behind that? And what is Iken going to do for the world?
No, well, thanks for the opportunity. I go back to when really started my career in the telecom business, right? And like I said earlier, I'm an old man, right? So I remember going from analog, big fat 25 pair cable on a
Mhm.
6 button set, up in the big computer in the basement, driving a dumb terminal. So you go from analog to digital to IP to in the cloud to as a service,
Yeah.
and all that goes with it. I originally remember selling phone systems to the office manager,
Mhm.
right? And then all of a sudden you're selling to the IT department and the
Yeah.
CTO, and so it's really been an arc of technology, and I've ridden that wave. And what appealed to me specifically was I was always with the smaller company.
Mhm.
I was with, the new guy on the block, or the smaller version. We were against AT&T, Northern Telecom,
Mhm.
Cisco came along, and You and I were generally, at least when we worked together, on the smaller side of that equation, but we were very nimble. We
Yeah.
were very quick to respond. It's interesting in my current role, all of those lessons that I learned have applied to where I am today.
Mm.
We're going against Meta and Google and Nvidia and these behemoth companies. But guess what? It's the same story. They're very, very big. They're aircraft
Mm.
carriers. They're
Yep.
very slow to turn,
Yep.
right? They're beholden to quarterly numbers. They face
Mm.
the same problems that the IBMs of the world faced when when Apple came along,
Mm.
right? And so you learn from history and you implement strategies based on historical lessons that we've all learned. And I think that's kind of lost on the younger folks, right?
Mhm.
And it's really exciting for me because I can apply all those great lessons I learned, all the mistakes I made, all of the successes I had. I think the
Mhm.
biggest success that I remember the most and propelled my career forward was really figuring out how to beat the big boys, right?
Mhm.
And we did that by doing things on the whiteboard and just drawing out, applications that weren't really thought of
Mhm.
by the big guys. Things in the call center environment, things in the personal use environment. So those lessons were really valuable to me as I moved forward. As far as where I am today, Iken is really an R&D company. We believe we've got a significant opportunity to help with visual technology, most notably holograms,
Mhm.
um, in ambient light without any headgear. So when we started Iken, everything was going to the goggles, right?
Mhm.
Meta, Facebook had just bought Oculus. We had a lot of competition in terms of the goggles solutions, and they just don't work very well. They haven't really gained traction. They're trying to find their footing. They're very expensive, very clumsy. And so the ability to free up holographic information in this environment without any headgear is really what propelled me to start to partner with my partner Taylor Scott, who's really, I call him the whiz kid, right? And but it's it's led us to really embracing AI and moving our product direction along visual AI. And so there's a lot of energy around that right now, and it's been really, really exciting. We're now prepared to walk into those companies I just mentioned with a
Mhm.
solution to their problem.
Very cool.
So I've got people on board now that we're walking into Google, to Meta, to Nvidia with what I believe to be, as I said earlier, a solution to a big problem of security in the
Mhm.
visual space. So very exciting times for us.
Awesome.
It's been quite a journey. It's taken a little bit longer than I thought, but there was a global pandemic in the middle
Yeah.
of things there,
Yeah.
and but we've weathered the storms, I guess, is what the way I'd like to say it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did, and I'm really, really hopeful for all you guys, and wishing you the best. I have just one final question for you, Joe. You've been very gracious with your time. I certainly appreciate it. One of the things that I'm trying to do as part of this podcast is an education and share, how a CEO thinks or how a CTO thinks, because I don't know that people really actually get that. Everybody knows, they assume, rightly assume, how busy they are now and being relevant. But the the profession of sales, it's forever changing. It's certainly changed a lot in the last, 5 to 10 years, with the internet democratizing information. Customers are way more sophisticated. And that, so what advice would you have for sales folks when they are meeting or going to meet with a C-level person?
Um, well, listen, I can only answer that from my
Mhm.
perspective, and again, older guy, been around the block, getting bombarded with all types of sales, whether it's text, whether it's email, whether it's phone calls, whether it's networking events, Vegas shows. I mean,
Mhm.
I am a target, right? I am a decision maker. And all I can tell you is, and I go back to that pendulum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was part of that pendulum in terms of telemarketing and cold calling and all that. But when somebody calls me on the phone or meets me in person and just says, "Hey, Joe, I want to tell you about an opportunity that I think is going to be good for you," I listen
Mm-hmm.
because I relate to that, you know. And I don't relate to getting a text. I don't relate to getting an email. It just doesn't work. And I understand that the technology is there, but for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I belong to a CEO group, you know, and I network, and even the younger folks, it's like, it still comes down to people.
I
If
agree.
I were a salesperson today, I would spend all of my time figuring out how to get live interaction with your customer,
Yeah.
whether that's on the phone or in person or some way of doing it, because it's just a better scenario for you to be successful. Yeah, it's just get back to the basics.
You know, I've heard that a lot, and I believe that as well. I think the art of selling has getting a little bit lost in translation with all the technology, because yes, you better do your homework before you sit down with somebody. You want to be respectful of their time and your own time, to be frank. But getting to know someone, know the business, meet with the teams, it always cracks me up a little bit when we just need to go straight to the CEO. It's like, well, does he even know what these? I mean, I'm sure he's aware, but I'll bet you he's got a bunch of people on his team he's depending on to make a lot of these decisions, and he wants to depend on them. So being relevant, I think, is something folks have to spend time on.
Well, I think throughout my career, I've I just believe that there's a difference between being busy and being successful.
Yep.
And I've sat in front of so many coworkers who were working really, really hard,
Hmm.
but getting nowhere.
Right.
So it's not enough to just work hard. You got to get somewhere.
Yep.
And the best way to do that, I have found, is finding a way to get a real life connection with somebody. If you
Hmm.
can't get to the higher level, get to the lower level and make them look really good. That's
Hmm.
your job. Make them look
Sure.
good. It's their decision. It's their process. Make them get a win because they solved the problem using your solution, your technology. And I don't believe that's happening as much as it did when you didn't have all this technology.
Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, technology is important. Hell, I'm in holograms. I'm eventually going to replace me. This will,
Mhm.
but again, we got to find a way to really connect with the customer if you're in sales.
I agree. Wise words, sir. Well, Joe, thank you so much for spending time with us here on the Edge. And for folks looking for the next generation hologram technology, don't look any further than Iken. I'm sure they can help solve your problems.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. It's exciting times, and thanks for thinking of me, Steve. Really good to catch up again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Joe.